Greetings to all the believers. Today's video, I'm gonna go straight into it. It's in regards to not loving the world. This is a very important video because oftentimes, and even in today's world, we're caught in the in between of the two, and sometimes it's hard, or a lot of times it's hard to discern what to listen to. Even that goes for believers as well, where we as believers have gotten lukewarm or have just began to just compromise more of ourselves and our values that stem from God. But I want to start with the passage in 1 John 2 verses 15, where it begins as such: do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. So this was a very significant few verses for me, because after I was reading it in my study, because a lot of times we think that if we go with the flow of how the world operates, that it would be advantageous for us or it'd be beneficial. But in the long run, we're just disobeying God, and we're just furthering the confusion and the disobedience that just brings about a life of strife, pain, and all the other unnecessary things that can be avoided. But I like how in this verse it talks about the distinction of how the world is going to pass away, but those who have their desires or who does the will of God will abide forever. And it speaks to also how the world, this is a temporary place where we have been sent here on assignment to do God's will, and how our home is going to essentially be in the new heaven and the new earth, which those verses for that as well, you can look it up. But this is a great reminder, because even for me, it's so easy to get stuck in the midst of just looking at the bills or looking at the problems that we have on this earth, or even just the concerns or worries. But we know, like this is telling us, the world, this is gonna, as we know it, it's gonna pass away. It's literally gonna pass away. So why get consumed and enthralled, or even living a life that just seeks an earthly reward versus having our soul and our posture towards the heavens, towards God. And it talks about too how those that are in the world lead with the desires of their eyes and have the pride of life. So it's just this operating out of the flesh, or operating out of what just feels natural or feels good to the body, instead of what is pleasing to God. And it's so easy to fall into this trap because, like I said, it feels good, or it feels good, like I guess in the moment or initially, until the conviction comes or whatever consequences are to follow, whether spiritually or physically. So it's showing, yes, you might see people out in the world having a jolly time with, say for instance, with like entertainment or celebrities, or just materialism, or just having platforms that continue to elevate their status or elevate their ego. But the word is saying how that is on the contrary of God's will, and how those things are also be fleeting. And Solomon does a phenomenal job of talking about this as well in Ecclesiastes, which is another one of my favorite books. More so later in life, I can't say that was one of my favorite books earlier on, but having lived a little bit, seeing kind of just a very hint of what Solomon is talking about in my life in Ecclesiastes has been very important, of how he talks about how most things are mainly just vanity or lead to vanity. Even if they're like good intention or whatever the case is about having riches or being well known or all these different things that you can go down a laundry list of items to connect to. But yes, it's having the pride of life of, I want to make sure I get the most out of life, in the sense of people worshiping me or people validating me, or just having all the things that we see a lot of times on TV or just on social media or whatever the case is. We see that being promoted. But these are all deceptions, that are created to further keep us away from God and to keep us entrapped in this matrix, that we call of the world, which I have some other verses that speak to this as well. And this is still in 1 John chapter 4, verse 4, where it says, "Little children, you are from God and have overcome them. For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are from the world, therefore they speak from the world, and the world listens to them." Verse 6, "We are from God. Whoever knows God listens to us. Whoever is not from God does not listen to us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error into the world, so that we might live through him." So this speaks to the distinction again about, in this kid, you could see how the world comes into fruition with our relationships, or how we communicate, the things that we desire or things that we focus on. You will see that pretty evidently. But it's saying how also that us believers, or those, we are from God, whoever knows God listens to us. So it talks about the obedience factor of knowing God's voice, and not only knowing God's voice, but listening to God's voice, and that taking shape through our lifestyle, through our mindset, through the things that we seek. And I want to also preface, these things aren't perfect, because we also have a fleshly desire that we battle every day. But with God's strength, he helps us persevere through that. And it's only through that we actually see the need for God. Because if we didn't have the flesh dilemma, or the pain, the struggles of this earth, how would we turn to God? So I look at it at this point in my life of, man, if I didn't have these, things that seemed devastating at the time, if I didn't have these moments happen, I wouldn't have grown in my relationship with God, versus, just having the natural successes of life where you're like, all right, you land the job, or you land the spouse, or you land the relationship, or you come across a lot of money, or you build a great business that doesn't seem to have so much adversity, which I know this is a rare case, but there's some people that have had the green light where they feel like they don't need God. But for me, I found it very important, like going through like the not so good moments of health, or losing a job, or just betrayal, and all these other things. Those things allowed me to see God more vividly and have a deeper appreciation and a deeper devotion towards God. So I just want to encourage you guys on that, because that is important. And it talks about too how the Spirit within us, for those who listen to God, we will, I'm paraphrasing, we will recognize the spirit of the truth and the spirit of error. So this is just beautiful, because this goes to show that we won't necessarily fall for the traps, because God has put in the spiritual discernment within us to know the difference between good and evil, you could say. And that will correspond to our actions and our lifestyle, a change of living for God versus living for our flesh. Let me see, do I have another verse? And then it talks about what really cements the difference in chapter 5 of everyone who believes, in 1 John verse 1, everyone who believes that Jesus is Christ has been born of God, and everyone who loves the Father loves whoever has been born of him. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and obey his commandments. So this also speaks to how we are not of this world, but we are of our Father, God in heaven. We are of his creation and of his will, and that is going to sustain us and ground us in finding meaning even in this life and of this world. But I hope this message comes across to you guys as something that you can relate to, and that could also just encourage you on your journey. But until next time, thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.